feeling is a little bit different, but also similar. It's
Oh,
a complicated issue, which it's just this never happened. So no playbook on how this goes. I actually do have a medical background. I have a master's degree in rehab medicine and exercise. So I'm familiar with some of the science that goes along with this, but like Ed said, even the scientists don't agree. So it's been one of those things where you just really don't know unless you're on the forefront of it, and then you don't have time to talk probably. But if you're not in that business, then you just have to follow the experts, which is a bit chaotic right now. I really appreciate that we having a high school student. I really appreciate that we have hybrid learning. I think that this is a really crazy time, and the school board can't just go and make decisions that contradict what state guidelines or Kane County or IDPH, whoever is calling the shots and making the rules. The school board can't just say, no, we're going to do this. That's not works from my understanding.
right.
I'm a parent, I'm a community member, so I hear a lot of talk. However, I don't really know that it's up to the board to make the decision of well, this is the guideline, but we're going to do this anyway, or this is the guideline and we're not going to do that. You can't. That opens you up to liability issues and safety. So you really have to take the recommendations of the people that are giving you the guidelines. With all of that said, I don't think that there's any one particular safety measure that we can't adhere to or could cast aside, or you can't diminish the SEL needs of kids, or there's other populations of kids that have to be in school because either that's the place they can get food, or that's their safest place, or their disability is more dependent on an in-person learning situation. But then there's also the kids who can't be in school because they're compromised themselves, or they have a parent that's compromised, and a teacher is the same situation. They could be compromised. They could live with someone who's compromised, as well as admin. I think every single situation has to be considered, and that means you have to have options. This is not a time where COVID is completely gone. Once COVID is gone, then we won't have this discussion. But until then, we have to follow what the experts are saying and make our best choices from there. The one thing I will say that I thought was pretty despicable coming from the superintendent is that he was asked, I think, either one full year or 2 years prior, multiple requests to start adhering to and preparing for when Illinois was changing requirements for snow days. Long before COVID happened or anyone knew that was going to be a thing, the superintendent denied those requests that teachers were making, that they really wanted preparation time. Instead, they knocked it out of the park in 3 days. You know, from as a parent perspective, I don't know what the school district knew before the official shutdown date, but as a parent, it looked like 3 days and all the teachers did the best they could. And hats off to them, because that's pretty impossible to completely change your direction in your field of expertise in 3 days and do something completely different. So I think they did a great job, but why did that superintendent say no? Why didn't he allow for those prep days? Is it contractual? So from what I understand, it was a decision made by the superintendent. And so if that's the case, and that wasn't what was best for teachers, granted, hindsight is 2020, they asked for that, and they knew that these ideas, or I'm sorry, the guidelines were coming from the state, that they were going to reduce being not in person for snow days, that they were going to have to, if they had a snow day, they would be online e-learning days. No time, no resources were allotted for that. So if that's solely the decision of the superintendent and the board knew that those guidelines were coming, why didn't they hold the superintendent accountable for that decision? Again, nobody knew COVID was coming. However, we did know that the state of Illinois was looking to change those things. And now, lucky that COVID happened. I mean, that's a silver lining with it. We don't have to have that issue anymore. But our district took 3 days to prepare. Same thing with the beginning of the school year in fall. The superintendent was on board meetings and on social media, or not social media, but putting out emails and saying, oh, well, our teachers are preparing so well and we're working real hard. Yet in the community, I have all kinds of friends in school, whether they're teachers or admin, And they're telling me, no, that's not what is happening at all. Teachers are being told, don't prepare. Unless you're subject specific, don't prepare, because we don't know what's going to happen with IDPH or regulations or COVID. So here's the superintendent telling us, oh, we should, we're prepared. Everything's great. We're working hard. That wasn't true. And then it turns out that we have to push school starting back a whole week because the teachers weren't able to prepare. So I think that, honestly, if I do get elected to the school board, there's going to be a lot more of holding the superintendent accountable, whether it's Dr. Pearson or whoever comes on next, or if his contract isn't renewed. We have to make sure that our leadership is standing by what comes first, which is kids. And the teachers weren't given that before. And we could have had a better result, not just being 3 days of preparation. So I think that's a pretty huge failure on the part of the school district and the superintendent. So I think we have to in short, to wrap up my answer with what are we doing with COVID and being in person, I think that right now everything's going well. You can't really change it or increase unless guidelines are changed. You can't just disregard some of those guidelines. I think everyone needs options until this is all over. And then we can go back to business as usual and everybody can be in school in person. But until then, I think it's really have to weigh heavily decisions based on what are your guidelines from governing bodies.
Visit my website at katebell.d303.com. Visit my Facebook page at Kate Bell for CUSD 303 School Board Member.